After my daughter arrived home bruised, my son-in-law smirked. What happened next was incredible. The moment the door swung open, Susan's heart dropped. Lily stood there, eyes brimming with tears, bruises mottling her arms like dark petals against pale skin. She was home from soccer practice, her laughter silenced by the ache of embarrassment and hurt. "Mom, they were mean to me," she whispered, her voice barely a trembling wisp. Susan felt the protective lioness awaken within her, a surge of rage mixed with helplessness. How could anyone dare to hurt her child? She knelt and enveloped Lily in a fierce embrace, but the warmth of their cozy kitchen felt distant, shadowed by a gathering storm. "Breathe, sweetheart. Tell me what happened," Susan coaxed, her voice steady despite her racing mind. As Lily recounted the taunts from her teammates, Susan's gut churned. Bullying? At a time when all her daughter wanted was to fit in, to belong? This was exactly why she had poured every ounce of her love and lessons into raising Lily since her husband had walked away without a backward glance. But then, like a chill creeping through the room, Jacob's laughter echoed from the living room, half-hearted and dismissive as he overheard them. The way he smirked at Lily, as if brushing off young pain like it was an annoying fly, sent a spike of despair plunging through Susan. She had long known that Jacob, with his silver spoon upbringing, didn't understand the grit it took to navigate life on the margins. His comfort felt like a barrier, an invisible wall between them, one that heightened the growing rift with every ignorant shrug. "Mom, it's fine," Lily said, trying to mask her hurt. But Susan noticed every bite of her words, the way her daughter's small shoulders slumped with the burden of facing disdain from those supposed to uplift her. A moral dilemma swelled within Susan, an agonizing pull between loyalty to Jacob and fierce advocacy for Lily. Each option clawed at her. She could confront Jacob in that moment, risk a fracture in family ties, or tread carefully and protect her daughter's fragile spirit. That night, gripping her nursing journal while on a late shift, Susan sought refuge in ink and paper. "Jacob's a good man," she muttered to herself, even as doubt gnawed at her heart. After all, wasn't there a chance his dismissive nature stemmed from an unresolved childhood of isolation? Days of working overtime seemed like mere shadows against the vibrant difficulties she faced at home. The smiley faces of patients flashing through her mind felt like a contradiction to the fierce turmoil residing in her home life. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as Thanksgiving drew near, a storm brewed within her. With Jacob's nonchalance echoing in her ears, she steeled herself, reminding Lily of the importance of resilience. A retired soccer coach had reached out, offering mentorship to help her daughter reclaim her lost confidence. Watching the two bond brought a flicker of hope amid the chaos of family tensions. Yet the air remained thick with unspoken words as Susan inched closer to facing the truth, a painful confrontation hovering like a damned secret. At the Thanksgiving table, surrounded by savory aromas and her daughter's fierce spirit, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Would Jacob mock Lily's bravery or unveil the wounds he had buried deep? Susan's heart raced, knowing the moment was pivotal, not just for Lily, but for herself, too. The question that lingered in the air burst forth unbidden. Could love truly conquer disdain amidst the brutality of buried scars? Thanksgiving dinner unfolded with an air thick enough to slice. The clamor of utensils clinking against plates felt discordant against the brewing tension in Susan's chest. She forced herself to focus on the warmth of the mashed potatoes, the savory scent of turkey. but every mouthful felt like swallowing lead. Lily sat fidgeting beside her, glancing up occasionally, a silent inquiry behind her brave facade. "Everything looks amazing, Susan," Jacob said, a satisfied grin plastered across his face. He leaned back, consumed with pride, unaware, or perhaps uncaring, of the turmoil he had draped over their home. Susan felt anger flare. How could he be so oblivious? How could he appreciate a festive meal while their daughter was battling turmoil in silence? "Thanks, Jacob," she replied, her voice tinged with steely resolve. If she could confront Jacob later, she would. But the immediate task was holding a semblance of normalcy at the table. Conversations flowed around her, each friendly laugh almost mocking as her thoughts swirled. Were those casual discussions hiding the truth? Their daughter, the one gleaming with hope, was still reeling from the comments that had haunted her since the last practice. Then Lily cleared her throat, drawing attention. "Actually, there's something I want to say," she began, her voice steady yet delicate. Susan's heart pounded. This was it, the moment that could either shatter or forge their family bonds anew. "I've been working really hard at soccer. Coach says I'm improving, even if some girls—" She faltered slightly, then pressed on. "Some girls haven't been very kind." The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward Lily. Susan held her breath. This was a fragile moment, a link across generational gaps. Would Jacob's response be supportive or dismissive? "Kids can be cruel, sweetheart," he replied, his tone unyielding, betraying a lack of understanding. "Just stick it out. People will move on." Susan's blood ran cold. There it was, the flippancy that fueled her ire. "Jacob, it's not just kids being kids. We need to support Lily in navigating this," she asserted, the simmering strength of a lioness ready to pounce. Each word came heavier each time as she pushed against the weight of the storm between them. "Mom, it's fine." "Really?" Lily interrupted, her voice quieter now, a mix of embarrassment and exhaustion. But there was an edge of defiance in her tone, reminiscent of Susan, and it made her heart swell. "It's not fine, Lily," Susan continued, eyes now locked on Jacob. "You have every right to feel hurt, and we should teach her that standing up for herself is vital. Just because it seems trivial to you doesn't mean it isn't significant." The air thickened, hovering with conclusions left unsaid. Jacob hesitated, then turned to Susan. "So what do you want me to do? Go after the girls? It's not realistic." Susan could feel her pulse quicken. This was why she had been avoiding confrontation. She was stepping onto a battlefield of values and perspectives, a place she had long tried to navigate delicately. Jacob didn't get it, and each of his dismissive comments struck deeper than the last bruise on Lily's skin. You need to acknowledge how words harm. It's our job to guide her, not just shrug it off. Lily's eyes widened, searching Susan's face. Reflected in her daughter was a budding courage that inspired Susan to push further. How do we expect her to grow if we don't show her strength and solidarity? "Are you saying I'm not supportive?" Jacob retorted, his temper flaring. The confrontation, once just a whisper in Susan's head, roared to life. "I'm saying you need to build her up, lift her in a way that matters. Children need to feel seen, especially by the ones they look up to." With every passing moment, Susan felt reductive paradigms collapsing. The familial ties she had sought to protect now felt suffocating. As the evening wore on, she realized the confrontation with Jacob was no longer an option. It was a necessity. As the last of the dishes were cleared, a new resolve blossomed within Susan. If she was going to teach her daughter the truth of resilience, she would have to confront her own fears head-on. She had grasped a crucial truth. Confrontation was not just about confrontation. It was about the ongoing journey of understanding where safety and loyalty intersected, a journey that needed to encompass them all. Tomorrow loomed large yet again. The confrontation was unavoidable. Susan was ready to face it, ready to reshape her family's narrative and unearth layers of truth. But would Jacob stand beside them or remain obliviously entrenched in his own perspective? The moment of reckoning was near. The dawn broke with the promise of a storm, the sky painted in hues of gray that mirrored Susan's inner tumult. As she brewed her morning coffee, the rich aroma coursed through the air, grounding her, yet she couldn't shake the feeling of dread wrapping around her like a cold blanket. The echo of last night's confrontation lingered, the unspoken words heavy in her mind. Today, she would have to step into new territory with Jacob and advocate fiercely for Lily. Lily was still asleep, blissfully unaware of the intense discussion that awaited her parents. Susan's thoughts churned with strategies for the day ahead. She visualized their living room, the scene of another confrontation, but this time she would be a voice of unwavering support. The weight of the decision loomed. She couldn't afford to falter. After her second cup of coffee, Susan felt the stirrings of resolve swell within her. The first step was clear. She must communicate to Jacob the stakes of their present situation. The narrative surrounding their family was ripe for change, and this change began with her. As the clock ticked towards breakfast, she prepared their usual morning routine amid the chaotic whirlpool of her thoughts. The toast popped up, the eggs sizzled, and she made a mental note to address the issue delicately but firmly. "Morning, sunshine," Jacob greeted, his jovial tone pulling her heartstrings momentarily. She hesitated, weighing how best to broach the topic, the words sitting uneasily in her throat. "Good morning," she managed, planting a soft smile on her face, even as thoughts clashed within her. This was crucial. The conversation would not be trivial. As they sat down to their plates, Susan's heart raced. "Lily, she's really struggling with what those girls said," she said, launching into the discourse she had rehearsed in her mind. "We need to support her. It's more than just childish banter. These things can hurt her spirit." Jacob forked several pieces of omelet into his mouth, the distraction allowing him a moment before responding. "I know, but she has to learn how to deal with negativity. Everyone faces it." "No," Susan countered, her tone sharper now. "What she needs is a foundation of support. It's our job as her parents to ensure she knows her feelings are valid. Dismissing it only sends the message that her experiences don't matter." He paused, brow furrowing. "You think I'm dismissive?" "I think you're seeing this from a lens that oversimplifies the hurt she's experiencing," she replied, her voice steady yet urgent. "She's at a stage where she needs us to build her up. We can't afford silence. We must guide her through the pain, not just let her endure it." A shift occurred. Jacob's defensiveness seemed to ebb slightly. He leaned back, evaluating her words, and the silence that followed was weighed down by potential understanding. Susan felt her determination surge. She wasn't just advocating for Lily any longer. She was also manifesting her own growth. "Maybe you're right," Jacob said, slowly, contemplating the implications of his dismissive stance. "But I don't want to baby her either." Susan shook her head, feeling a rush of relief at his willingness to reflect. "It's not about babying her. It's about empowering her. Proper balance is needed, strength and sensitivity." "I guess I just assumed that she'd tough it out like I had to," he admitted, his voice softening. "But maybe I should reevaluate." The conversation was no longer theoretical. It was becoming a dialogue, a chance for mutual discovery. Susan seized the moment. "You have to understand. Being part of a team involves emotional awareness. We can't send her out there without the tools to stand tall." Lily's footsteps padded in the hallway, a reminder of their collective responsibility. Susan looked at Jacob, sensing in him a readiness to engage with not just their daughter's issues, but their shared values. "We can tackle this together," she proposed, her confidence all the more palpable. "Support her in this journey. Let's come up with strategies that work, not just for her, but for us as a family." As Lily entered, bleary-eyed and curious, Susan's heart swelled with anticipation. They weren't merely adults letting life happen. They were shaping their lives and their daughter's path with integrity. Susan was beginning to understand that this wasn't just about her daughter's resilience, but about the family's evolution as a whole. This moment felt like a pivot. She had carved space for growth through vulnerability and confrontation. But as they gathered around their breakfast table, Susan couldn't ignore the deeper shadows ahead. There was more to navigate, and this was only the beginning. Lily took her place at the table, a bright smile lighting her face. "What's for breakfast?" she chirped, oblivious to the brewing decisions around her. But Susan felt an electric charge run through her as she met Jacob's gaze, both imbued with the dawn of a new understanding. Yet, in the pit of her stomach, fear whispered. Was this newfound awareness enough to face the external challenges their family would inevitably encounter? A flicker of doubt momentarily clouded her resolve, and she found herself bracing for what lay beyond the breakfast table. The day had just begun, and a full reckoning awaited. The laughter and chatter around the breakfast table dissipated as the menacing cloud of unspoken tensions loomed over them. Susan watched Lily juggle her scrambled eggs, an innocent shield against the storm that was about to unfold. While Jacob joined in on the light-hearted banter, Susan felt a weight settle in her chest again. She had stepped into new territory with him, but it wasn't enough yet. She needed more than just a momentary consensus. She sought tangible change. "Lily," Susan began, her voice breaking through the cheerful exchange, "let's talk about what happened at school yesterday." She noticed Jacob's expression shift, his joviality dampening. "What do you mean?" Lily asked, tilting her head with genuine curiosity. "Some girls said unkind things, and it upset you. I want to make sure we talk about it." Lily's fork clattered against her plate, her bright eyes narrowing. "Mom, I don't want to talk about it right now." "Right," Jacob chimed in. "It's just part of growing up." Susan's heart sank momentarily at his dismissal. She felt the encroaching frustration clawing at her insides. "No, Jacob," she said, her voice unwavering but quieted by her resolve. "We need to let her know it's okay to express her feelings." Lily's shoulders dropped, and she focused back on her breakfast, clearly vexed. The atmosphere thickened, thick with unspoken words. It was time to step up her game, not just for her daughter, but to challenge Jacob's way of coping. "Lily, I know it's hard, but sometimes talking helps make things lighter," Susan said gently, her eyes searching for a flicker of willingness in her daughter. "I want to hear your sides of the story when you're ready." "Mom, I don't want to talk to you about this. Just please forget it," Lily pleaded, her voice trembling slightly. Susan took a breath, feeling the tension in her throat. It would have been easy to accept Lily's reluctance and back off, but Susan understood the implications of such an action. She was standing at a crossroads, a decision point that transcended a single conversation. Not just her daughter's growth, but her own was at stake. As the stoic silence enveloped them, she could feel Jacob's gaze flickering between his daughter and wife. Had her words caused a rift? Had she done too much too soon? A simmer of inner conflict started brewing as doubts nudged away at her hard-fought resolve. "I spoke with your teacher yesterday, Lily, and she told me she's noticed some of your friends behaving differently. I just want to make sure you're okay." She pressed gently, disguising her urgency. The room felt small, suffocating, as the silence grew heavy. Finally, Lily sighed heavily and dropped her fork. "Fine. They said I was a loser for talking to a boy in school. It's dumb." The last words came out almost as a whimper. Susan felt her heart race, not out of worry for the girl's words, but in the realization that this was precisely the moment she needed. "How did that make you feel?" she softly probed, ensuring her tone remained gentle. "Stupid," Lily responded, her voice brittle as if her shield had cracked. "Not stupid. You're feeling hurt, and that matters. I know it's tough, but feelings are real. We need to confront them," Susan reiterated, sensing a breakthrough hanging in the balance. Jacob remained still, a spectator now to the shifting emotional landscape. Had she inadvertently put him in a position to defend his daughter instead of encouraging her vulnerability? Susan's mind raced. She could feel the ground beneath her shift as she finally examined her own habitual avoidance of difficult conversations. She was more than a supporter. She was becoming a guide through her daughter's personal development. Yet, the nagging doubt returned. Would Jacob understand the importance of nurturing Lily's emotional needs? The unease twisted within her with palpable intensity. Would the path they were paving together lead to mutual understanding or deeper divides? As Lily looked up with watery eyes, behind that strength that was still forming, a frail hope flickered. "Can we just talk about it more later?" "Absolutely," Susan replied, heartened by the small ember she'd ignited. "We can talk when you're ready. I promise to be here every step of the way." Jacob cleared his throat, shifting in his seat. "Maybe we can all talk about this together. Family meetings? I mean, it could help keep everyone in the loop." For the first time, Susan felt a wave of something she hadn't embraced in a long while: anticipatory excitement. They were heading toward uncharted territory. There was a long road ahead, and Susan was ready to walk it. But as calmness began to settle around them, a knock at the door rattled through the air, shaking her from her momentary vision of unity. Who could be interrupting this delicate yet promising progression? The moment of truth hovered just out of reach, taunting her with the uncertainty of what or who awaited on the other side. The knock echoed again, a staccato reminder of the unfinished conversations swirling within the confines of the kitchen. It sliced through Susan's moment of fragile optimism, jolting her back to the reality that lay just beyond the door. "Should we check who it is?" Jacob asked, shifting restlessly at the table, his earlier eagerness seemingly overshadowed by uncertainty. "Yes, let's see," Susan replied, her voice steady despite the racing pulse in her veins. She could choose to let this distraction derail them, but that wasn't an option that aligned with her new resolve. Instead, she stepped toward the door, a determination threading through her every movement. As she opened the door, the sight of Mrs. Granger, the neighbor from down the street, greeted her. The woman's face bore an unreadable expression, eyes veiled with concern. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she began, her tone clipped. "I wanted to speak with you about Lily." Susan's stomach twisted. What could possibly have happened now? "Is everything all right?" she asked, the urgency in her voice betraying her calm facade. Mrs. Granger glanced over her shoulder, as if wary of being overheard. "I think it's important we discuss some things that I witnessed while walking my dog yesterday." For a fleeting moment, the world around Susan blurred, thoughts racing as panic threatened to seep in. Just moments before, they had been on the cusp of a breakthrough, and now this. "Come inside," she urged, stepping aside to let the woman enter, her mind already calculating how to extract information without alarming Lily or Jacob. Once settled at the kitchen table, the weight of the conversation felt heavy in the air. Jacob, sensing the change in atmosphere, shifted beside Susan, his concern now a tangible force as he looked from her to Mrs. Granger. "I saw Lily with some of her classmates, and there seemed to be a spat. It looked a bit heated. I didn't want to intrude, but—" Mrs. Granger's voice faded, revealing the unspoken implications of her words. Susan held her breath, processing the myriad of emotions churning within her. "What exactly did you see?" she pressed softly, focusing her energy on gleaning information rather than letting fear dictate her reactions. "There were a few girls, including that girl Charlotte, who—" Mrs. Granger hesitated, gauging Susan's response. "They seemed to be saying things that didn't look kind. I just thought you should know. It worried me." Each word felt like a hammer hitting a nail, driving deeper into Susan's previously fortified walls. Her apprehension grew, but a spark of determination ignited within her, a need to protect and empower her daughter against the shadows of cruelty. "Thank you for letting me know," she said, her voice calm but steeling herself against the mounting instinct to confront. Jacob's eyes narrowed, catching onto his wife's change in demeanor. He turned his focus onto her, silently questioning. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Susan nodded, her throat tightening as she attempted to suppress the rush of protective instinct flooding her senses. "I will be. We need to address this," she replied, meeting Jacob's gaze. "Lily needs to know we have her back. I want to talk to her now." Suspecting a deeper divide between her and Jacob might arise from this, a decision formed within her. She needed to encourage dialogue, not just confrontations. She turned back to Mrs. Granger. "Thank you again for sharing this. Can you help me keep an eye on things, or is there anything we can do together?" As Mrs. Granger offered suggestions, Susan felt her anxiety morphing into action, as if her resolve was a muscle she had finally learned to flex. Each word drafted an implicit agreement that they had to take visible steps forward, and she began to plan how best to make this transition smooth between her daughter, her husband, and the surrounding environment that could feel so toxic. When they finished their discussion, Susan stepped back into the living room area. The air buzzed with uncertainty, and hidden in the tension lay the truth. She had opened the door to not just confrontation, but to unforeseen possibilities for growth. For herself, for Jacob, and for Lily. "Lily," she called out, trying to mask her apprehension. "Can we talk for a moment?" Moments stretched as she awaited her daughter's response. Susan felt herself teetering on the edge of a transformative moment, one that could either reinforce their family's bond or expose it to greater fractures than she anticipated. As the footsteps approached, a new thought nagged at her. Would this conversation be the key to unlocking the dynamics in their family, or would it only lead them further into uncertainty's grasp? The weight of that question hung in the air, echoing internally as the door creaked open. The moment Lily entered the room, her expression was a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. The faded bruises around her knuckles and the defiant tilt of her chin told Susan that her daughter had been through something more than just a simple altercation. It was a slipstream of unresolved tension, and Susan felt it coiling tight in her stomach. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" Lily asked, her voice skimming the surface of a deeper inquiry. Susan could sense the barriers forming around her daughter, woven from events that had adjusted the fabric of their relationship. "Can we sit down for a few minutes? I want to talk about something important," Susan replied, nodding toward the kitchen table as if it held the answers she sought. The words felt heavy on her tongue, laden with the weight of a mother's concern and the spark of empowerment she wanted to instill. As they sat, Jacob joined them quietly, positioning himself at the edge of the table, echoing Susan's unspoken support. The stillness was charged, vibrating with questions unasked, concern unspoken. "Mrs. Granger came by earlier," Susan began, choosing her words carefully. "She told me she saw you with some classmates, and it didn't sound too good." Lily's eyes flickered, the defiance slipping ever so slightly. "What did she say?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper, yet filled with the angst of a young girl who hadn't quite determined how to navigate the harsh realities of social dynamics. "She mentioned a disagreement between you and Charlotte," Susan probed gently. "I just want to understand what happened. Your feelings matter to us, Lily. Always." For a moment, silence fell again like a curtain, and Lily's gaze dropped to the table, tracing the patterns etched into the wood. Susan felt an urge to reach out, to bridge the perceived chasm opening up and show her daughter that she didn't have to bear this alone. "I don't want to talk about it," Lily mumbled, a note of finality stinging the air. Yet beyond that wall, Susan could detect a spark, a flinch revealing that the situation was a lot more complex than her daughter was allowing to surface. "Lily," Jacob interjected softly, his tone measured, "we're here for you. If something's going on, it's better to share it than keep it bottled up. You are not alone in this." Susan observed Jacob's words threading compassion into their fragile family dynamic. She recognized his intent, though apprehension laced her thoughts. Would this approach yield the trust Lily needed, or would it push her further away? Lily lifted her head slowly, eyes glistening in the kitchen's soft light. A decisive moment hovered above them, like a pendulum ready to drop. "It was a stupid argument," she finally said. "But it's not just that. It's everything. It's the girls at school. They don't realize how hard it is." The admission flowed like a dam breaking, and Susan leaned in. Sometimes people can be thoughtless, especially when they're young. It doesn't excuse their behavior, but it's something that happens. How can we help? Lily hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the fabric of her shirt. "I wanted to stand up for myself, but it felt wrong. What if I become like them?" The gravity of that confession struck Susan. This was where Lily's development lay, caught in the struggle between who she wanted to be versus the archetype of cruelty she despised. "You won't become like them, Lily. Standing up doesn't mean you mirror their actions. You have the power to choose kindness, even when faced with unkindness." As soon as the words left her mouth, Susan felt the weight of their importance. Could this conversation shape Lily, forge resilience that would carry her through future challenges? With that realization, Susan knew that progress could come from their vulnerability in this moment. Yet, she too faced an internal battle. To uphold her firm belief in compassion while navigating her own fears for Lily's emotional safety. The room held its breath, choices buzzing in the air, until Lily met her mother's gaze. "Maybe I'll talk to Mrs. Granger next time. She seems to get it." That flicker of resolve ignited Susan, the spark of opportunity evident in her daughter's willingness to confront an adult. The instinctive fear of the unknown began to transform into anticipation. "Let's plan for that, but remember we're with you every step. You've got this, but you don't have to go it alone," Jacob affirmed, the warmth in his voice enveloping them. Pride mixed with trepidation surged in Susan as she recognized a new chapter forming in their family story. The path forward, though uncertain, held the potential for so much growth. As the moment lingered, she sensed a shift within Lily, within Jacob, and indeed, within herself. Yet a lingering doubt was undeniable. What awaited them as they ventured further into this vulnerable territory? "Mom, can I ask you something?" Lily's voice broke in again, thick with the unexpected revelations emerging. "What if I stand up for myself, and it doesn't go the way I hope?" The heart of the matter hinged delicately on that question, a butterfly floating away into uncertainty. Would instant courage lead to uncomfortable truth or unforeseen repercussions? The atmosphere in the kitchen thickened as Lily's question hung in the air like a beckoning challenge, fraught with tension. Susan could feel her heartbeat pulsing in her ears, echoing the uncertainty in her daughter's tone. It was clear this was a moment of reckoning, where vulnerability would either deepen their connection or send Lily spiraling back into her cocoon of fear. "Sometimes things don't go as planned, especially when we decide to take a stand," Susan said slowly, measuring each word. "But it's the act of standing up that defines you, not the outcome." Lily's brows knit together, the weight of her potential decision pressing upon her. "But what if I lose friends? What if I make it worse?" Her voice trembled slightly, revealing the fear that danced just beneath her bravado. "Maybe you're meant to lose some friends," Jacob suggested gently. "Real friends support who you are at your core and respect your choices. If they can't do that, are they truly your friends?" As Susan watched the exchange, she recognized Jacob's quiet wisdom. He was helping Lily navigate a difficult path, teaching her that friendship should never come at the cost of her self-respect. Yet she wondered if they were being too philosophical at a time when practical steps should guide Lily through the murky waters of adolescence. "Perhaps you can start small," Susan proposed, feeling an urge to regain control of the conversation. "Think of one scenario where you might stand up for yourself this week. You could practice how it would go. Just a rehearsal in a safe space with us." Lily contemplated this, her fingers now playing with a loose thread on her shirt. The visualization of possibilities sparked in her eyes. Like what? I mean, how do I even start? Perhaps with a classmate who crosses a line, or someone who makes a joke at your expense. You can affirm your boundaries while staying true to who you are, Susan advised, willing her daughter to see steps rather than the abstract fear that seemed to paralyze her. What if I fail? Lily asked again, her defenses still fortified against the sting of rejection that felt imminent, vividly imagining scenarios where boldness backfired catastrophically. Failure isn't the enemy. It's feedback, Jacob responded, his voice steady. Each time we stand up, we learn, we gain experience. Look at how far you've come already. Remember today's conversation? You shared your feelings, and it turned into a chain reaction of understanding. Lily remained quiet as Jacob's words began to weave their way inside her, tickling the edges of courage buried within her. After a moment, a vestige of hope crept into her expression, reflected in the tilt of her chin, which softened just slightly. Okay, I guess I could try. Just practice it in my head first. Maybe I can find how I want to say it without crumbling, she mused, an ember of determination igniting as Nancy's nurturing instincts kicked into gear. That's the spirit, Susan encouraged, feeling a swell of pride surge. And we'll take note of how you feel afterward. We're not just here to facilitate. We'll also be there to celebrate every small victory, even if they come with challenges. But as Lily contemplated the possibility of a new facet of herself emerging, a flicker of doubt still remained. The anticipation of moving forward came bundled with the fear of the unknown consequences that could lurk around the corner, sending shivers down her spine. Before you go ahead, remember, it's okay to stop and rethink or backtrack, Susan added gently. Your voice matters, and so does your comfort. You are steering this ship. As the conversation wound down, a sense of solidarity enveloped them, a poignant moment where familial bonds deepened. Yet, Susan could not shake the nagging feeling that the most pressing challenge was still ahead. Can I write it down? What I want to say? Lily asked suddenly, her words unhurried and deliberate, conjuring a more concrete image of the confrontation. I think that's a brilliant idea. Writing gives clarity, Jacob acknowledged, already seeing the wheels turning in Lily's mind. Clarity. Susan considered the word and its profound importance in their dialogue. She couldn't help but wonder, what could emerge from the internal clarity Lily sought, and how would it affect her relationships with her peers? As Lily took a deep breath, a renewed sense of agency sparked in her, yet the essence of possibility hid just out of reach. Would she muster the strength to act when the time came? The tension remained palpable, a lurking specter that whispered its dark uncertainties. Would this moment of decision lead to the transformation they all hoped for, or a spiral of despair that would test their newfound resolve? Just remember we're all rooting for you, Susan said softly, her eyes locked onto Lily's, hoping to instill the unshakable notion that they would navigate whatever came their way together. But as Lily reached for a pen to write her thoughts down, a sudden noise from outside broke the silence like glass shattering. It was sharp and unnerving, pulling their attention away. What was that? Jacob said, his expression shifting from support to alertness. The shift in the room was instant, anxiety prickling at the edges of their budding resolve. What had interrupted this crucial moment, and how would it affect them as they moved forward? The answers hung tantalizingly close, just out of reach, as the tension thickened. Lily's heart raced as she stood frozen, her pen hovering above the blank page, her thoughts swirling in a storm of apprehension. The sudden noise outside had shattered the moment they shared, but it was more than just an interruption. It felt like a harbinger of the challenges awaiting her. What was that? The question escaped her lips, a tremor in her voice hinting at her unease. She glanced toward the window, searching for answers in the shadows that flickered across the street. Let's check it out, Jacob suggested, attempting to pull them back into a semblance of normalcy, though his voice lacked the confidence that usually accompanied his wisdom. Susan nodded, her protective instincts kicking in. aware that the unknown could shift their focus away from the confrontation Lily was preparing for. As they slowly approached the window, Lily's thoughts spiraled. What lay outside was just an echo of the tides churning within her. Did she really have the resolve to embrace the confrontation that was surely coming, even if it was only practiced in her mind for now? Outside, they leaned toward the glass, eyeing groups of older teens gathered, laughter punctuating the tension in the kitchen. A ball rolled past, sending shouts ricocheting amid the casual chaos. It was deceptively light-hearted, and yet the world felt heavy to Lily. Could she break free from the cycle of fear that had bound her to her friends and their unrelenting judgments? Turning away from the window, she returned to the table, her focus centering back on the piece of paper. She felt the weight of her decision thickening the air. "I'll write it down," she asserted, trying to infuse her voice with determination. It was a strange comfort, knowing she could frame her thoughts, even if the practice felt like balancing on a high wire. "Great." Jacob's encouragement felt warm, even as he sensed the uncertainty that lingered in her voice. "Just stay true to yourself. No one else can do that for you." Closing her eyes momentarily, Lily began to visualize her words forming into sentences. Each thought morphed into a potential script, a dynamic dialogue where her voice wasn't just a whisper, but a decisive declaration. Failure seemed daunting, lurking with its fangs bared, ready to pounce at the smallest misstep. But she felt the flicker of hope igniting again, bolstered by her own capacity to articulate her needs. "I am strong enough to speak up." The phrase echoed in her mind as she scribbled her first sentences down, the ink spilling on the paper like newfound bravery. As she wrote, the anxiety that had weighed her down began to lift. It was empowering, the act of claiming her voice, even if it was just to an audience of her family. With each stroke, she felt the dense cocoon of fear start to fray. This wasn't simply about rebellion, it was about establishing her identity in a fractious sea of adolescence. Lily's pulse began to quicken with the rhythm of purpose as her thoughts took shape. Maybe failure wasn't the end, but a mere stepping stone toward growth. Once she had written down her initial phrases, she hesitated, caught in the throes of overthinking. What if the words don't sound right? The familiar doubt began to creep in. Suddenly, her composition felt as fragile as glass again, ready to shatter at the slightest critique. Is it supposed to be perfect? Susan's gentle voice broke through the murky fog of her self-doubt. You're not performing, you're expressing. It's okay if it's rough. You can refine it later. The sincerity in her mother's tone anchored Lily, lending her the reinforcement she needed. Encouraged, she picked up the pen once more and continued to write, this time with a fiercer sense of urgency. Rejection could mirror her deepest fears, but the compulsion to assert herself emerged stronger. She pushed the pen forward confidently, rallying against the weight she had carried for so long. The noise outside faded into a dull thrum, overshadowed by the awakening realization that her feelings mattered. There was no longer a choice to be made about whether she should stand up. She was already in the arena, the battleground of her budding identity. But as she scribbled the final words, the unsettling noise from outside returned louder, a chorus of laughter followed by a squabble that erupted into chaos. "Lily, let's take a look," Jacob said, his eyes darting back toward the window as an unsettling feeling settled over them. With her heart still pounding from her earlier revelations, she cast one last glance down at the paper, knowing that whatever lay ahead could change everything. Would this moment of clarity transition smoothly into her practice, or would the impending confrontation unravel her newfound strength? Lily's tension was palpable as she and Jacob edged closer to the window. Instinct urged her to conceal her anxiety, yet the unease in her gut contradicted the small victory she had just claimed in written words. The laughter erupted again outside, accompanied by a sharp crack, a brief moment of chaos signaling some altercation. "Maybe we should call someone," Susan suggested, her voice tinged with worry. "No," Lily found herself interjecting. an unfamiliar assertiveness threading through her tone. "I want to see what's happening." It startled her, this newfound resolve manifesting even in minor decisions. The trio pressed their faces against the cool glass, peering into the unfolding scene. A group of teenagers, raucous and free, played while skateboarding and tossing a ball. Yet, the joyous distraction was tantamount to a facade as Lily honed in on two figures standing apart, a tense confrontation brewing between a boy and a girl. The sharp edge of unresolved conflict wafted toward them, mingling uneasily with the cool evening air. "Should we intervene?" Jacob questioned, glancing at Lily with concern. She shook her head, her mind racing. "No, let me see how they handle it first." That desire to observe, to gauge their dynamic, pulsated through her. It mirrored her own uneasy confrontation that was to follow, the one she felt she had just equipped herself for on paper. As they watched, a jabbing exchange of words erupted. The boy's aggressive posture starkly contrasted with the girl's deliberative calmness. She could sense Lily's anxiety morphing into fascination, an internal dialogue igniting about how she, too, could navigate such a landscape of confrontation. "Look how she's holding her ground," Lily murmured. It was a revelation blooming within her. She was witnessing a version of herself. But just as she felt her resolve strengthening, the boy shoved his skateboard aside, stepping closer to the girl, his expression morphing from arrogance to aggression. Lily's heart quickened, an instinctive fear wrapping around her throat. It ignited a sense of responsibility. Her earlier conviction, the script she had begun crafting on paper, was now crying for embodiment. What does it mean to stand up when it truly matters? What tools did she possess in this moment that could help her assert not only her own identity, but possibly influence someone else's confrontation? "Come on, we can't just stand here," Jacob urged, his own pulse racing. "Wait!" Lily hesitated, her thoughts racing. What if her own outburst triggered something darker? There was power in her voice. She had just embraced that strength on paper. But could she truly project it into the external world? They exchanged glances, and for a split second, the air thickened with an indecision that felt heavier than the gravity of the moment. But in that instant, as if echoing her internal struggles, the boy stepped back, hands in the air. "Fine, don't hang out with us then," he scoffed, retreating with sulking friends. The girl, however, remained resolute, arms folded, brows lifted, a staunch declaration of self-worth that reverberated in Lily's mind. "See? She didn't need to fight," Lily whispered, empowerment mingling with the remnants of her fears. Jacob nodded, and as he turned to Lily, a gleam of understanding sparked between them. But as she absorbed this revelation, an unsettling thought gnawed at her. The girl had walked away unscathed, while opposed to the earlier assurances she had written down, her own confrontation loomed larger now. This was a moment where confidence and crisis intertwined. Lily felt her pulse racing anew, not just anxiety now, but a creeping urgency to act, to put her own words and actions to the test. "Are you all right?" Susan's voice broke through her reflections, concern laced with undeniable strength. "Yeah, But it lacked conviction. What was she truly feeling, and how would she project that strength? The door behind them swung open, echoing down the hall. The moment had shifted, removing the distraction from outside, the laughter dissolving, replaced now with an implicit challenge waiting in the house. How could she transition from being an observer of confrontation to one who actively navigated her own? The heavy air pushed against her, daring her to step forward into the unknown. All her rehearsed intentions lay ahead as her heart beat with trepidation. Could she truly face her internal conflicts and the voices outside without falling back into the shadows? With a newfound flicker of bravery, Lily took a deep breath. "Okay, let's get ready," she stated, her decision reverberating within the walls of her spirit, aware she was no longer just poised at the brink of confrontation. She was about to embrace it. Beyond this doorway was her moment. The real question lingered in her mind, a challenge cloaked in her own fears and aspirations, each breath whispering a promise. What awaited her? A demand for courage or the specter of retreat? As the initial adrenaline rush began to ebb, Lily stood tethered at the threshold of her own resolve, acutely aware that the two worlds, the vivid colors of her internal growth and the stark realities outside, were about to collide. The door before her was more than a physical barrier. It was a testament to her steadfast refusal to retreat from conflict any longer. Gathering her strength, she turned to Susan and Jacob, both of whom studied her with expectancy. "I'm ready to talk to them," Lily declared with a firm resolve, a surprising steadiness reflected in her voice. "I want to show them that I'm not that easy to push around anymore." "No more hiding, right?" Jacob replied, pride illuminating his expression. His words tethered her to a quiet sense of pride that she was stepping into her own identity, a realization that whispered of the bravery that had been steadily cultivated through their recent discussions. "Exactly," she nodded, her heart racing as clarity washed over her. This was more than just about confronting the girls who had taunted her. It was about asserting her dignity in a larger landscape that often attempted to dim her voice. She felt like a warrior ready to claim her battlefield. "Let's rehearse your sentences, just to feel confident," Susan suggested, her tone imbued with motherly assurance. "Okay," Lily agreed, sitting back at the kitchen table, grounding herself. "Here goes," she began, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the pen. "I want to let you know that when you say hurtful things, it affects me deeply. It's not just some joke." "Perfect. You're articulating it well," Jacob added. Lily continued, hesitance intermingling with growing assertiveness. "I deserve kindness and respect, just like anyone else." Each sentence became a lifeboat, carrying her deeper into the ocean of empowerment. Mrs. Granger's words echoed in her mind. "It's brave to stand up." And just like that, she understood that aligning her voice with her identity granted her agency, the ability to choose how to navigate her adolescent struggles. Suddenly, the concern that had once settled like fog began to lift. The confrontation no longer felt like a daunting task, but rather an opportunity, an avenue for connection, diminished hurt, and exquisite personal growth. This realization manifested as a newfound energy within her. "That's it. Keep going," Susan encouraged, her eyes gleaming with pride. "These phrases are your anchor. Repeat them to yourself when doubt creeps in." "I can stand up for myself," Lily reiterated, the words solidifying with conviction. As she penned down her thoughts, steadying her breaths, the echo of voices from outside surged back into focus. The playful chaos of teenagers had transformed into a subtle energy of distance, seeping through the open window. Movement outside tugged at Lily's attention, a reminder of the social landscape she felt adrift in, a landscape she was determined to navigate with resilience and assertiveness. "I think I'm ready now," Lily announced, rising from their gathering with a strength she hadn't recognized before. The smirk of confidence emerged as she glanced at her parents, their supportive stances anchored in unwavering belief. As they stepped outside, the world around her felt different. The air buzzed with potential as they approached the backyard where the girls often congregated after school. Each breath filled with purpose electrified her resolve. This moment mattered, not just for her, but for everyone who had learned to silence themselves, as she had. "Remember, stay true to your feelings," Jacob gently encouraged, maintaining eye contact, a reassuring presence in the chaos around them. She nodded, uncertain of what would happen when she approached the girls, but confident they would hear her message. The sun cast a warm glow, illuminating the backyard, matching the burgeoning light of her own empowerment. As they reached the corner of the yard where the group congregated, Lily's heartbeat quickened. Would they hear her? Would they listen? Doubt flickered, but she extinguished it. She had rehearsed her words, crafted her shield. "Hey, can we talk?" Lily called out, her voice reverberating with clarity over the din of playful banter. Surprised heads turned toward her. The expectant silence that filled the air transformed into a cocoon that enveloped her, bolstering her courage. This is really important. The conversations paused, curiosity mingling with caution, and she took a step forward, resolved. Pressing forward, she felt the weight of every eye studying her, the way the world had often judged her. Yet the vulnerability unfolded into something beautiful. "Look," she began, grounding herself in her earlier deliberations. "I really need to say something. I've been thinking about how you talk to me, and to each other. I know you might think it's just joking, but it hurts. It makes me feel small." As she spoke, each word resonated with a strength that surprised her. The foundations she had built with her family had prepared her for this moment, allowing her the grace to remain assured even in uncertainty. The girls exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from surprise to contemplation. One girl, Charlotte, the main instigator, stepped forward, her brow furrowed. "I didn't think you'd care. It was just teasing." "No," Lily asserted, her voice unwavering. "It's not just teasing. I'd appreciate respect, not just for me, but for everyone. We're all trying to figure things out together." From that point, the conversation unfolded unpredictably, with flickers of understanding shared amidst hesitations. It wasn't a perfect exchange, but what emerged was remarkably transformative for Lily. She had delivered her words and felt the resonance echoing within her, a testament to her growth. As her peers gradually opened up, the weight of judgment began to lift. Boundaries were being established while compassion emerged organically, tracing the borders between commonality and disconnect. Returning to the embrace of her own home felt like stepping into the clarity of her newfound identity, realizing how far she had come. As the evening wrapped her in warmth, Susan and Jacob greeted her with expressions of pride. "Lily, you're incredible," Jacob said, beaming with admiration. Susan enveloped her in a hug, whispering words of affirmation that poured from her heart. "You spoke your truth, and that's a monumental achievement." With a smile blossoming on her face, Lily realized she had achieved something beyond confronting her friends. She had cultivated understanding and solidarity within herself. This was her moment of transformation, a stepping stone to navigate the complex landscape of adolescence and self-worth. As they all gathered around the table later that night, laughing over dinner and sipping on warm cocoa, they felt lighter together. The recognition of their individual struggles, both internal and external, blended seamlessly into a newfound familial commitment. In that moment, Lily owned her identity and acknowledged her capability to stand tall, even in the face of challenges ahead. This was not just a fleeting victory. It was a concrete achievement etched into the core of who she was becoming. And as she lay in bed that night, enveloped in the quiet comfort of home, Lily knew this was merely the beginning. She had taken her position, one where strength and resilience flourished, bolstered by the love and understanding from her family. The world outside was still uncertain, but she emerged ready to conquer it with an unyielding heart. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. It's the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.